Hi, and welcome back to Normal. I'm your host, Jeff Simone, and with me today are two brave people, parents from the Burlington School District, Adrian Simeone and David Hannafin. First of all, welcome and thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it.
Could you move that mic a little closer to you? I want to make sure we get plenty of good audio. My throat's closing up. Sorry about this, folks. Happens. This is a podcast. We're not super professional. All right. So if you could put your headphones on, I'm going to play a little bit of some audio. And hopefully I can get this queued up.
My name is David Hannafin. I spoke last week, and I mentioned I have kids in elementary school, middle school, high school, and I had met on a number of occasions with people in the schools. I met with Dr. Visconti and Chen last year. We talked about that, and the point I was making last week is that this wasn't an oversight. We had covered this. We had spoken about it in detail. I'm not quite sure what the woman was getting at, but she kept bringing up religion. And the point that I had made on a number of meetings, and the one that I had made with a few people last year, was that this whole thing, and this woman that was on the TV earlier was talking about the LGBTQ community and the marginalization and everything else. And you know, I had submitted at one point to the middle school that it seems to me like the biggest bully organization within the middle school is that LGBTQIA plus organization. And if you go into the school, there are flags flying everywhere. There are banners. Every door has a sticker on it that says LGBTQ safe zone. So the language that the people on the left typically use is it's triggering. It's, you know, I'm triggered. It's offensive. If I saw a cross, that'd be offensive. People keep bringing that up. Well, the thing that I had mentioned to people last year was that just stop. It doesn't belong in schools. Kids go to school to learn history, reading, writing, arithmetic. Teach them the basics and then send them home. That's our job. So this woman was saying that.
Well said.
Thank you.
Well said. I want to thank you, first of all. It takes a lot to get in front of people, right? Speak publicly for something you are passionate about, care about, which is our children. So you're both in the Burlington School District, right? Your kids go to Burlington School in middle school?
Correct. I have kids in high school,
Kids in high school, middle school.
as well.
Okay. So my daughter's in middle school as well. Lucky enough, I send her to Catholic school. So this stuff doesn't come up. I'm well aware of it. It's part of the reason I send her to Catholic school.
She at St. Charles, or?
No. But this stuff doesn't exist, right? So as you said in the clip, they should be learning reading, writing, arithmetic, all the good old stuff. So this is being pushed. So before we get to the guts of all this detail, I'll start with either one of you if you want to kick it off. So when did this come about? So this video circulated. It was online, got millions of hits all over the country. Survey comes out, right? And it's sent. How does this walk me through this? Adrian, can you walk me through how the survey takes place? And I mean literally, like, is it a piece of paper? Is it online? What happens with this? And or tell me, give me some more background.
So from what I understand, the survey started in 2012, and they were running it every other year. And when they first were doing it, was on paper. And then a couple of years ago, that Leahy paid a big bunch of money so that they could have it digitized and do it on the computer. So the survey gets sent to every student's email address.
Okay, so it's an emailed survey. It's from the school district or from the school, or is it?
The school was contracting with JSI to do all the mechanics of.
What's JSI?
JSI is John Snow Inc., which is a consulting group for a bunch of like.
Okay, so they get paid.
Yeah.
So they're a consulting group that gets paid by Burlington taxpayers, or maybe the state.
They got grants from Leahy. So technically Burlington's not paying for it, but it's kind of confusing why the superintendent is like really invested in making sure the survey happens.
Okay. Maybe we'll put a pin in that for a second. Okay, so the survey goes out over email, and it's sent to all the students, or you can opt out in advance.
That was part of the issue, is that even like for parents, I opted my son out. So they had a form that went through Parent Square. So Parent Square is like the app that a lot of schools use to send communication to families. And you get inundated with so many things on there. So if you have kids elementary, middle school, high school, you're getting bombarded with stuff. So I felt really lucky that I saw the opt-out opportunity. But because when you look at it, you don't really know what it's about. It cuts off the heading.
Do they use vague language?
Well, it was just the title was so long, you'd have to really click on it and read into it to understand. I mean, like when it was like signing up to get a yearbook, it was like urgent response required for the yearbook. But here's this sexually explicit survey. It's like totally vague, and like so many people missed it. So that was your one and done opportunity to opt out of it. So when they say about, oh, well, people didn't opt out, I don't care if they didn't opt out because they didn't really get a good chance to do that. So then the school sent the survey to every student regardless of whether or not they opted out. And so in the investigation afterwards, they revealed that they didn't have a way to not send it to students who were opted out. So that's a problem.
Well, so they lied. I'll say it. You don't have to say it. They lied.
And it was done as an in-class assignment type structure. It wasn't just an email that you could ignore or just not read. It was
okay.
actually
So the
dedicated
email
to it.
the email comes through to their personal email, their school email.
'Cause
email
everybody
address.
has a device. Everybody's got an iPad.
Right. So, and then they're required / encouraged / whatever to take the survey in the classroom
It's
on
pretty
their
much
Chromebooks.
class time. It
class
was
time.
45 minutes to do this survey. I mean, I don't even want to do a 5-minute survey for anything.
Right.
45 minutes for these kids to sit down. And so the teachers were supposed to have a script to read to the students and actually inform these kids that even if I didn't opt my child out, that they could have opted themselves out. And that didn't even get said to the kids.
But there's pressure there too.
Oh,
it's
for
like
sure.
You're 13, 12,
yeah.
and I mean we all remember being that age. It's like, oh well, I'm gonna raise my hand and say no and be brave. It's like, no, you're not. Like that's not what 12-year-olds do.
And also, if you raise your kids to be obedient and compliant to authority, and a teacher puts something in front of you and says you're going to take this survey, most kids are. That's what the situation was with my son. He realized that he shouldn't, so he took screenshots as he was taking the survey, so he could
Smart
bring it
kid.
home and show it to me.
All right, he's going somewhere
because he knew that this is something that he was not supposed to be taking, but the teacher made it clear that everybody was going to take the survey.
Okay, so pressure right there, right? Okay,
but he just didn't know that he had the option to get up and walk out, which I made clear to him after the fact that you have the option to get up and walk out.
That's not on him. That,
right.
It's on the.
But the school committee put it on the kids. Because I brought that up to one of the school committee members, the fact that my son, and she goes, well, why did he take it then?
So this ties back into what you said at the meeting from the clip I played earlier, right? This is pressure. It's an agenda. It's being pushed. This is not by accident. This is not lovey-feely, and we're all just one people, and we want people to be nice to each other. This is nonsense. They're pushing this, right?
And you asked about the beginnings of it. So when Adrian was answering the question how the survey started, but this is not the first conversation. Adrian and I had just met this year because of this. But it turns out that there were a number of people like myself and Adrian that were fighting this battle for years. I mentioned my wife and I have 9 kids.
Yeah.
So I have 3 that are now in college. I have 2 that are in high school, 2 that are in middle school, and 3 in elementary school. But since the older ones were around, this has been an argument with the school, and I didn't realize that everybody else was having the same argument. But it's been a constant refrain that you go up to the school, and we had said to them on a number of occasions, either you stop this stuff or we're going to start. And once this group starts, we're not going to let it go, and that's where we're at now. But this survey thing, the part I didn't have any intention of speaking when I went to that school committee meeting. I just wanted to hear what they had to say. But that first meeting, I kept hearing them say this was an oversight, this slipped through the cracks, nobody was aware of it. The head of the school committee, she had mentioned on, I think, 3 occasions, I can assure you nobody was aware of these questions, nobody saw them. And that's when I get up at the first meeting and said, we sat in the conference room right next door last year.
That doesn't sound right.
It wasn't right, because I said to the superintendent and the assistant superintendent, we had this discussion, like we had the discussion. You were in the room. We were sitting in a conference room right next door, and we discussed this, and we talked about it. Now you're saying it was an oversight. And that's why I spoke in the second meeting, which was the clip you just showed, was they're just hiding under their desks, hoping this thing blows over and goes away.
I could say it's not going to go away. So I'm going to look into the camera right now and say, if you're a gubernatorial candidate right now, you need to pick up this issue, because this what needs to be shifted. I'll tell you this right now, policy shift from the state, because they'll do what they're told when it comes from the state. A policy shift should be, you don't have to opt out. It's opt in if you want to take this survey. That's it, full stop. because none of this belongs in the classroom. And it especially doesn't belong in the classroom pushed from people with severe ideological bias that have, in my opinion, malicious intent for a lot of this.
That was one of the recommendations that came back from this, what would you call it?
The meeting? Well, they agreed that they weren't going to have any more surveys until they came up with a policy. And then technically they didn't even follow their own policy about how to make new policies, but that's a whole other thing. But so so now we're in a split because 2 of the school committee members say opt-in only, 3 of them say opt-out only.
And their argument is that if you do an opt-in, then who's going to opt in? Well, that's the point.
Yeah, their wording was, we're concerned because then we'd have to send multiple reminders to get people to opt in. And I'm like, don't you see the humor in that?
Yeah.
Like,
well, I remember there was a case, some other, some similar type of issue in a school district somewhere else in the country, and opt-out was given, and basically everybody opted out to the point where why bother doing it, but they still wanted to get it done because they really want to get it done, and they want to push this stuff forward. So I think for next year's election, and this is a political show, and make no bones about it, but this is how we move things, right? This is how we change things. Okay, elections. School committee elections are coming up, local elections in 2025. I'll mention this, Max Page, who's the villain in Massachusetts, in my opinion right now, head of the Massachusetts Teachers Association, is putting up local school candidates, right, for all across the state, and it's happening all across the country. They're putting up their own candidates for local school boards. So be very aware, Massachusetts, of who's running for school committee in your district, because it's going to come up and it's not going to stop. Circling back to the survey. Sorry, we're going to jump around. This is a podcast, free-flowing conversation here, which I think is a better format anyway. When they got the survey, what did your kids feel, tell you? What happened after that?
Well, my son just said that the questions were really weird. I mean, my son's in the 8th grade, so he's a little bit older. But, I mean, when you look at these questions, I mean, they're asking kids about their gender identity. They're asking them, explicit questions about what kind of sexual interactions they've had.
Oh, I'm sorry. Played a little. Was that trying to cue up the survey itself. Go ahead. So, I mean, I think it was really confusing for kids because some of the kids, from what we heard from parents, were asking their friends, like, what does this even mean? Because, I mean, it was questions asking them about anal sex and oral sex and sex toys. I mean, that's just like, and when I was talking to someone about these questions, it's like you're now normalizing something that a child that age shouldn't know about. They shouldn't. Correct. Middle schoolers shouldn't know about sex toys. There's no reason for them to know about that. So, it's just exposing them to content and normalizing things that shouldn't be normal for that age. Yep. It's just terrible. So, yeah, my kid thought it was weird because he's a kid. Like, he doesn't even understand the gravity of what they're putting in front of him. Well, this is when we fight this in political terms, I think a lot of the left will come at, Democrats and the left will come at and say, what, you don't want kids to learn about in health class? It's like, this is 5 miles beyond, intercourse creates babies or whatever, and even if you wanted to get into STD transmission or something like that, this is like from when I was in high school, this is leaps and bounds beyond that. And people need to be really aware of this. I'm going to cue this up. All right, let me just do a quick little plug here because I'm going to put this up. Please go to the Mass GOP QR code on the screen to help donate, because I want to get a TV into this studio and mount it so my guests can see what the audience can see. I'm going to put up the questions here. Let me clear that and do this. All right. Okay. Text of the question. Gender identity definitions. Which of the following terms, I'm just going to read through some of the questions that were on here, okay? Which of the following terms best describes your current gender identity? Again, going to 11, 12, and 13-year-olds. And some of the possible responses: cisgender, girl or woman; cisgender, boy or man; transgender, girl or woman; transgender, boy or man; non-binary, or genderqueer. That's my favorite. Questioning, I don't know what this question means. I'd prefer not to answer, right? So they give them some for the survey for the purposes. Okay. They want that
after you've read all those other.
Yeah. So they
It's not even boy or girl. It has to be cisgendered. Like they wouldn't even necessarily know which one they were.
Well, there's look. You could do deep dives into all of this. We're gonna go maybe an hour. So and we have lives. There is an ocean of debate and academic study debunking it, getting into why it's called cisgender. It's otherizing normality, what we consider normality, male and female, biological truths. All of that stuff is being turned on its head for this insanity, and it's going to be forced compliance of you must say he or she or they or them, and utterly upending all of the stuff that has been, put civilization on track for centuries. So, but let's continue here because it will get better. I don't know, worse. Which of the following terms best describes your current gender identity? We did that. Which of the following best describes your sexual orientation? Lesbian or gay, straight or heterosexual, asexual, bisexual, pansexual, queer. Again, there's more questioning. I don't know what these questions mean. I prefer not to answer. Keep going here. Let's talk. During the past 12 months, how many times did someone you were dating or going out with try to control you or emotionally hurt you? 11, 12, and 13-year-olds are getting this. During the past 12 months, how many times did someone you were dating or going out with physically hurt you? I mean, so these questions, some of them could be, I guess, valuable, but they're all lumped into a lot of this. And I think what happens is like the question of is somebody hurting you is put in with this survey about are you genderqueer?
Right.
And and then you conflate the two, and then when you call them out on the survey, they say, well, you don't want people to know if they're hurting you, and then they throw it back on you. Those, I think, there's some, again, nefarious and malicious intent behind
100%.
a lot of this.
Well, my favorite was when they asked if you were suicidal, if you've ever considered killing yourself. And then it was like, how often do you eat vegetables? And it was like, how do you just sprinkle this stuff in? Like it had no rhyme or reason to it. And it's just like, yeah, some of those questions are valid. But, if you're going to read some of the ones about bullying, it's like, well, how does a child define bullying? Because a lot of people, like someone was mean to me, they bullied me. Well, is that really bullying? Or someone said something that hurt your feelings, so you were bullied. Right. So it's like you kind of get this confusion into kids' heads. And then if the child says, well, I identify as queer and someone bullied me, then they bullied me because I'm queer. And so now there's hate in the school. Mm-hmm. And so that's where I really felt like it was going because now they have all this data, but do you really have information that's useful? And it's like you can twist information.
Some of the questions are pretty, it just says, do you feel safe in your school environment, or do you feel welcome and affirmed in your school environment? So I was saying to the person that was in charge of that survey, I'd asked her, I said, well, let's just say that I'm interpreting the answers and you're interpreting the answers. So my son walks into the school and every door has the LGBTQ safe zone sign on it. And there's rainbow flags everywhere, transgender flags everywhere. Yeah. It's a constant refrain, morning announcements. So if he says, no, I don't feel comfortable in the school, if I'm the person that's taking that survey and I'm going to interpret, I'm going to say, well, we got to get this garbage out of the schools. We got to remove it because it's making kids uncomfortable. What they do is they look at that and say, well, we need to double down and we need to have more transgender flags and more. So when I posed that to her and just said, that's a very generic question. Do you feel welcome and affirmed in your school? Two kids are going to say no for very, very, very different reasons. So what do you glean from this? And she had to admit that was true, but yet they're not going to change the survey. So who's interpreting the answers?
Right. Well,
we know the answer.
Yeah, we know who's interpreting it. It's and why they're interpreting it the way they're interpreting it. Right. So again, to get political for a second, what we need to do as Republicans is start getting opt-in, no more opt-out. Everything is opt-in. If you want to even do it, I mean, it should be removed fully.
The end game should be this is over.
Yeah. And as parents, we have to stay firm on this because I got to tell you, it's not going anywhere anytime soon. Even though they're changing the type of stuff in Europe right now, a lot of they're starting to roll back a lot of this gender identity insanity, and people are hanging on around in the States because there is so much money that is floating around for, like you said, the grants. And we won't get into the medical interventions or anything aspect of that, but since Obamacare, that has exploded. There's a reason why for, I don't know, 1,000 years, this stuff really, didn't come up, but all of a sudden in the past 10 to 15, it's exploded.
Right.
And it's only exploded in Western civilized countries. This is not by accident. This is not a coincidence. So I'll applaud you both again. I think it's important that parents get involved, but how do you get involved? Well, know who your school committee is. Go to the school committee meetings. Vote for people who, the next election, who support normalcy and just getting back to what we know as normal education. I'll point out one more thing, that the idea that, so is a cost-benefit analysis, right? While they're taking 45-minute surveys, and this is just one small chunk of their day, because this is repeated over and over again throughout the day, they're not learning
English. This is part of the indoctrination
Yeah.
hour. So
Yeah.
in the middle school, they have building block, which they didn't have before. So now they have building block, which is like 45 minutes.
That sounds nice.
To do nothing. But this is where they put in that social emotional learning. This is where they go, oh, what's the theme for this month? Oh, it's, Black History Month. We're going to talk about how racist our country is. Oh, it's Women's History Month. We're going to talk about trans women. Like, this is what they do. And so it's like, it's very sneaky. So like they had the time for this because they're already taking time away from teaching our kids to indoctrinate them. Like, I've seen slideshows that they have these kids, like for Pride Month last year, they all take them into the cafeteria and they give them breakfast, right?
Yeah.
And then they watch this slideshow about, the whole Pride movement. And it's like, this isn't an opt-in. This isn't even anything they tell you about.
Yeah.
So they're already kind of, I'm sorry, they're like kidnapping our kids and trying to just change the way they see the world.
No, that's a fair assessment.
And even regular classes, there's a computer science teacher at the middle school that she cannot utter a sentence without it having been intertwined with her LGBTQ agenda.
Yeah, well,
Computers they're programmed with ones and zeros, I think. I don't know how it works.
Well, the problem
nothing to do with transgenderism.
Right. The problem we have as a society is like, I don't know that it's becoming more widespread, but still not, it's not 50% of the population, but it is concentrated in very specific areas, academia. So if you go to school, if you're a college student, you go to school to become a teacher. This is, you struggle this, doesn't matter the school. And I mean this, it doesn't matter the school because the graduates from the colleges are programmed with this stuff coming out of it. Maybe they're free thinkers occasionally, but a lot of them are not. Or they're just, to them, this is the new normal where all this stuff is being pushed. So then they get a job in a local school district and this is just automatic. This is what we do. This is part of education. And it becomes a real problem.
You mentioned you went to UMass. I have a daughter I went to BC. I have a daughter's at BC, another one at UMass, another one at Southern New Hampshire. But the one that's at UMass, she's a track athlete. And we went out for a recruiting trip, and we're walking, touring the campus trying to recruit my daughter. And we walked through the queer disabled talk space. There's a designated area.
They didn't kick you out?
I looked at it, so I stopped and I took my phone out and took a picture of it. And the coach, he knew where I stood, but he just shook it. He's like, "I'm sorry, Mr. Hannah, but it's on every campus." At this point, I'm like, "Can you explain what a queer disabled talk space is?"
Was he able to? Because
he just kind of chuckled. He's like, "We're on a college campus." And then we just moved on. But I'm thinking, you got to be kidding me.
So they're disabled.
I guess
they're queer. They have to. I mean, those are the two qualifiers. But the talk space part, I'm actually more curious. Like they're not allowed to talk in other spaces. They need this. They need that specific space.
I'm not going to say anything right now because nothing nice is going to come out of my mouth.
It's in a student union building, a designated area for the queer disabled.
As serious as this show might be, sometimes we'll keep it light, but also this is we'll keep it PG. We can get into expletives when I stop.
But the other thing too, like with the teachers, they're getting that when they are going to college, and then the teachers' unions are pushing stuff on them. Absolutely, they go to their conferences. I've seen what they're being pushed on at the conferences. It's all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then the school gets grants and they go to these workshops and things like that, and it's all implicit bias. It's all how to be more inclusive and how to create welcoming environments and how to address the mental health issues of your students. And they're not focused on teaching them to be better teachers. That's not the goal anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Well,
our teachers union of Burlington is particularly egregious. The guy that runs the teachers union,
he must be best friends with that guy from the state.
That's his whole agenda. And the thing that's crazy too is that no matter what the subject matter is, they're framed as the victim of everything. So he's organizing people to go down and protest Donald Trump down in D.C., but yet we're hateful bigots because we want to go to a school committee meeting and have our opinions heard. So he'll put something on a post that says, this is democracy in action. This is what it's all about. We need to go down and protest this tyrant. And so he's bragging about how they need to get all the teachers in Massachusetts together to organize to protest the president. But yet if we show up at a school committee meeting, that's hateful.
Right.
Rhetoric.
Yeah, if we say we don't want our kids exposed to sexual stuff, we're bad parents.
Yeah. So let me do this. Sorry, I hit the wrong button here. There's good news and bad news, right? So the bad news is this isn't going to end anytime soon. But the good news is their tactics are wearing thin, and a lot more and more parents are slowly becoming aware and more active and engaged in what will stop it, right? So I think culturally, maybe I'll ask you guys this. I think the idea that, we're victims, what you just said, the patriarchy and oppression, and we live in a fascist state, which is all nonsense anyway. Those tired lines are becoming tired to everybody, and everybody has that crazy maybe friend from high school or relative who just constantly posts 98% memes on Facebook or whatever, and you just roll your eyes and you're tired of hearing it. That stuff's wearing thin.
I think so.
I think people are over it from a cultural perspective. And given that, now it's like we got to kind of like push back the tide a little bit, and we need normal people to run for school committee and normal people to say no to the teachers unions. And I think, I could be wrong about this, I'll check in further episodes. Next year, the Massachusetts Teachers Union, again, Max Page, he's the villain in Massachusetts, you should be aware of that, is trying to push forward a law, a ballot initiative that says teachers are allowed to go on strike. Now, it's illegal currently for Massachusetts teachers to go on strike during the school year or at all, right? They can't do it because what disrupts it disrupts the whole educational process. Happened in Newton, happened in Woburn.
Yeah.
They want to do it everywhere because they want to control every aspect of it, so parents are left out in the cold and they can tell you to go pound sand. So this needs to be stopped. This guy needs to be stopped in the sense that we need to, make sure that up and down the ballot, everybody who's involved in this pushes back against this concerted effort. And it starts with people becoming aware. It doesn't, by the way, if you're at home, it doesn't take that much effort to do it. You need maybe, I'll get a few signatures on some ballot papers. You go down to the supermarket, maybe the transfer station, you get those, you get on the ballot, and you keep fighting. Maybe you don't win all the seats, but you win a few, and then the next go around, you win a few more. And you got to chunk this, just claw back the power that these people want to claim. I'll share a story maybe in a little bit, but how did your kids, you said your son just thought it was weird. What were the after effects in terms of how did he feel? Did you talk to him about it? What did he say? What was the reaction or the conversation like on a personal level, if you don't mind getting into that?
Yeah, no, it just opened us up to have conversations about things that I didn't think he really was ready to have conversations about. Yeah. My son is like he's not like this super exposed to a bunch of different stuff doing he plays basketball. He goes outside and he plays, and he doesn't like care about this kind of adult kind of stuff. So it's like now I have to kind of, be cognizant of the fact that he is aware of what these things are when he shouldn't have been. So specifically for my son, I had concern, but I'm more concerned about those 11-year-olds. These 6th graders who are so, I volunteer with 6th graders. I teach religious ed. They're like babies. They are so different from an 8th grader.
Yeah.
So it's like, when I was in 6th grade, I was still playing with Barbie dolls. I believed in Santa Claus, like legit. I believed in Santa Claus
the
in
6th
6th
grade
grade.
Is that barrier.
Yeah.
Where you
So,
start
it's just so heinous that they had no qualms about putting this in front of little kids. It's just so it fires me up.
What
the part that we talked about opt out, opt in, and one of the parents made a pretty good point as well, is that so even if your kid was because her son was successfully opted out, the teacher in that classroom did honor the opt out, and the kid didn't have to take the survey. But he's sitting right next to his best friend who's taken the survey.
Yeah.
And she said during the survey, the friend turns around and was like, "What does this mean?" And ask him about it was one of the anal sex definitions. And the kid's like, so what the kid says is, "I don't know. We should Google it."
Oh.
So now what does that open you up to? So you go home and you Google anal sex toys, and welcome to that world. So that's the part. And then also, even if 75% of the kids are opted out and 25% of the kids take the survey, what do you think they're talking about at lunch that day? They're kids in middle school.
And they all have phones in their pockets.
Yes.
Or at
so
least that.
Did you see that question about this? No, I didn't hear about that. And also, and then the argument that the left is using and the teachers use, well, these kids are discussing this stuff anyway. So, well, because you keep putting it in front of them, to Adrian's point earlier, is that you normalize this stuff. You make it a conversation point.
Yeah.
And that you're making the kids discuss it and talk about it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be. Otherwise, they're talking about the Bruins game the night before. They're talking about their favorite sports team.
Mostly. Well, there's a I hesitate to say this sometimes. There is a groomer aspect to this that is really unseemly, right?
Disgusting.
And they paint it with this phony facade of kindness, and they're trying to help kids who might be confused when in fact they're the ones doing the confusing. And it's obvious to those who are paying attention. But you know what? You guys are the exception. I hate to break it to you. This is in America. You guys are the exception, meaning most parents aren't paying attention to this kind of stuff. They're not.
I agree with that. I think that Adrian made the point when we first started this conversation with the school committee that some mother had the courage to put those screenshots. Her child did the same thing, took screenshots, came home from school. Yeah. And most kids at 11, 12, 13 years old, they're going to feel really uncomfortable even talking to their parents, regardless. I have a great relationship with my kids, but to have a kid come home and say, hey, they asked us questions about anal sex toys, they're going to be embarrassed to even say that out loud. Yeah. So this kid spoke to his mother. The mother took the screenshots, put them on I don't have Facebook or anything, but she put them on a Facebook post, I guess, and parents in Burlington saw it, and all of a sudden that's what kicked up this firestorm. So that's what kind of coalesced all of us around this issue, is that someone had the courage to do that. And then I would find out, I've said to the school so many times when I go up and discuss this to them, I said, I'm sick of going to one of my kids' games, or I'm at a hockey rink, I'm at a field, I'm at a track, and parents are sitting there talking about, can you believe the stuff that happened in the school today? Yep. But parents are afraid to get up and, so Adrian and I aren't afraid to get out in front of this and have a conversation in public, where a lot of parents, I think, even if they're aware, they're a little too afraid to speak up because that might make them an outlier. And they've done a great job on the left of making you feel as if you're the outlier.
All right,
and we're not. There's a lot more of us than
let's
there are.
Let's do that. Who's the worst school committee member in Burlington?
That's a contest.
Name them all. Well, one. How many members do you have in?
Well, I wouldn't say they necessarily openly push it, but they tolerate it and enable it.
But at this point, if you see the dust up that's occurred because of this, and you see the anger in the town, look, that should be an automatic. Hey, listen, if everybody's offended by this thing, we're out. But they won't.
But hang on, what are their names? And I ask that because look,
so
this is how you get them out of power.
Sure. So
vote for somebody else.
The guy that's been great is Jeremy Brooks. He's been on our side 100%. Right, he's been the lone reed standing up.
So Jeremy Brooks, go help campaign.
And
for
he's
him.
running next. He has to run next spring, so we have to keep him on.
All right.
But really, the ringleader's Christine Monaco. Who's been on the board for 20 years.
Okay.
And it just seems like she just flexes that power to have a close relationship with the administration, so she can get letters of recommendation or whatever she does for the people that she knows. And then she's kind of a puppet master, where she implants other people on the board that she can control. So Catherine Bond is a puppet.
Are they all elected positions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And
so she backs them. Yeah. She pushes them and makes sure that all her people vote for them.
How often do the elections go?
Every 2 years.
Every 2 years.
So next year, Jeremy will be up, and Catherine Bond, we got to knock her out.
I think the election happens every year, but it's 2-year terms. Is that what it is?
Well, if it were 2-year terms, the elections would be every 2 years.
Yeah. Okay. So it's
probably
3 rounds.
But I think it's
3 rounds.
Oh, different seats.
So it's I think every year there's an election, but it's just who's up for re-election.
Okay.
think.
Yeah, maybe right. Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
Well, now we're starting to pay attention now, because in the past I used to assume that everybody had the best intentions for our kids, and then this made it pretty clear that
No.
So I was never asleep at the switch, nor was Adrian, but now all of a sudden, okay, these people, they need to go.
Okay. So.
And I feel like they need to go because they control the superintendent, and the superintendent is the one that's enabling all this kind of stuff. So like whenever like they had a calendar out, and on the school calendar, because my kids were actually in Catholic school for like 3 years. I pulled them out during COVID, and I was trying to avoid the whole middle school thing. But then actually our Catholic school ended up enabling a lot of woke stuff, and I was like, why am I paying for this when this is exactly what I'm trying to get away from?
That usually goes back to what we were talking about earlier. They don't know. They don't even know. Some of them don't know. They just, and this happened a couple years ago with me, and I was obviously pretty vocal, like, we're not doing this. And then it disappeared. It was done. Sorry, whoops. Because they graduate from college. They think this is normal. It's just a survey. What's the big deal? And then you start to peel back the layers of it, or you peel back the layers for them, and you show them what the actual big deal is. Okay, so Catherine Bond is up for election next year. Mm-hmm. Okay, do we have a candidate?
We're working on it.
That's what we're working on. Yeah, we got to get the right person.
It's not either of us.
Okay. But I want to point this out to, well, not either of you, but I want to point this out to everybody in Massachusetts. And if it goes beyond Massachusetts, this is all over the country. You have to do this. You have to be aware of this. This isn't ending, and the left is doubling down and redoubling their efforts, and they're putting a lot of money behind it. So we have to find candidates that can go on. Is this like, if say 4 people run, is it just the top vote getter gets the spot?
I believe so.
Okay, so there's not multiple spots.
I think there's 2 spots up for the next election.
Right, there's 2. So maybe it's 2, 2, and 1, because Massardo we had just had an election right after this had happened, but people had already done all their mail-in ballots and everything, so we didn't have enough time to fix it. But it was Massardo was up. Was anybody else up when she ran?
I think that.
Or was it just her? Was Monaco up?
No. I can't remember. Melissa.
Megan and Megan.
I think I could.
Yeah,
be wrong,
I don't know.
Okay, and it's for the whole town, not like districts or anything.
It's just for the whole town.
It's for the whole town.
Yeah.
So the top 2 vote getters get in.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think, and part of what has happened since this is that we've really done a push to educate people in the community about what's going on.
Okay.
So they know, because a lot of people, I understand the feeling. You're busy. You want to just focus on being a parent and what's for supper and getting the kids to soccer practice or whatever. You don't want to have to be thinking about, oh gosh, I hope the people who are educating my children aren't indoctrinating them. So the sense I get from a lot of people is, oh, well, I can shield them from that stuff at home. That's the mentality, because they don't want to get involved. I mean, even if they would be willing to have a conversation with their principal and be like, listen, I don't want this kind of stuff in front of my kid, and I want you to know that I don't want it. Yeah. I think that can make a big difference too.
I went and spoke to the principal after. So June is Pride Month, and they've been littering the school with flags. And last year there was an incident. The year before, every kid walking into the school, they're giving them rainbow stickers and rainbow flags, and a couple of the kids just dropped them on the ground, and then they go and make this big news story about it, calling it hate speech.
It was national news.
Yeah, I think I remember that story. Yeah. You guys are busy in Burlington.
Yeah, people were emailing me like, "What's going on?"
So, but the interesting thing is that my son was one of them. He's now in high school, but a couple of his friends, they were talking. They said you have to wear colors to represent pride. They want him to wear pride colors, and so my son had said to one of his friends, they said, "What are you going to do? Your family would never tolerate that." And he said, well, I'm proud of my country, I'm proud of my faith, I'm proud of my heritage, I'm proud of my family. He said, so I'm going to wear a shirt. He has a shirt that it's, the front of it says CYC, stands for Carry Your Cross, and on the back there was an image of Jesus carrying a cross, and over that it said, God bless America. And it says, I stand for the flag, I kneel for the cross. Yeah. So he wore that to school that day. And then a couple of his friends like, that's a pretty good idea. So they said, well, so they all started wearing shirts that had American flags on them, and the school interprets that as hate speech. Yeah. Because, how could they be so hateful? So that's the part that was pretty frustrating. So this year, because of the big kerfuffle that's going on right now, the middle school principal decided that they weren't going to do things to acknowledge Pride Month. So when I went up and met with the principal and the assistant principal, we had to sit down and, I just asked him, I said, so just out of curiosity, how did this June go so far? And the assistant principal has been there for a long time. He had said, by far the easiest June we've had since I've been a teacher. I said, well, wash, rinse, repeat. Like, you don't need to do this. Yeah. So the kids go to school. They came here to learn math and history and English and writing and take a gym class, and then you send them home. We'll take care of the values. We don't have this town where we have race riots, and we don't have these incidents. Because I've asked them a number of times. They always use that excuse. Well, there's a lot of violence perpetrated against the transgender community. I said, I know that you can't give me specifics, but give me the broad strokes. There was a 6th grade girl that was hung by her underwear in the locker room. Explain it, and they have no arrows in the quiver.
That's nonsense. I mean, first of all, I think you both know we don't have time to get into it. The violence that takes place in the transgender community takes place under very specific circumstances in very specific areas of probably mostly major cities, so things like that. I had something on the tip of my tongue and now I forgot it. Oh well. Okay, so Burlington is it's a nice town. I mean, it's like middle class to upper middle class town. It's not a problem place.
I grew up there. It was a great town. That's why I still live there.
Yeah, it is. It's a nice town. They got the mall. They got all these restaurants coming in. If you live there, you go there to pretty much have like a nice life, a nice life. But that's not good enough. Like you hit on it a little bit before. They offended by American flags, offended by this, offended by that. Look, we are facing.
They told you dress for pride. So this is what I'm proud of, but you're wrong to be proud of that. You need to be proud of us,
right? Because they're not proud of our country. They're not. In fact, they're taught from a young age and in college that America's a bad place, sexist, racist, homophobic, systemically racist, all nonsense. But it's pushed into what they know, and the peer pressure from it on a social side, it can be overwhelming, right? Imagine and I think like we talked about a little bit earlier, the cultural shift has happened. More people are chiming in and going no.
Well, I think because it got so bad. I mean, when you're at the point where there's pornography in the schools, you know what I mean? That's when it's like that's what has to happen. It has to get so bad that people are like, oh my gosh, this is really bad. Because for so long they scared us and told us we were bad, hateful people if we said things, right? And so everyone was quiet, and those people are still quiet. They don't want to say it because they don't want the heat. Everyone's like, well, I have a business and I have this. I'm like, well, we have these things too. But it's like at some point, who's really paying the price? The kids are paying the price, not us. You know what I mean? So
it's the first response that you're going to get. You're hateful, you're a bigot, you're racist, homophobic, all of it, all of the nonsense. Or there's not even a rational argument before that. It's just you're hateful, and now it just washes over people, and they're like, no, I'm not. Well, I'm not filled with hate. It's just stop it. That is basically what we have to do, and it does start by them. One, they have to lose. They have to lose these elections. If you don't get them out, they're going to keep trying to do this, and we saw it with President Trump cutting the funding for cutting federal funding for colleges and universities for diversity, equity, inclusion, and we're going to rename it, and we're going to.
Oh yeah, they just changed titles.
They're just changed titles, so they'll do workarounds, but there has to be political consequences over and over again, and we have to keep hammering it and just stay on it.
And this woman that was on the TV earlier was talking about the LGBTQ community.
I'm going to close this page here. My bad.
I remember.
Like this is again. I'm gonna go to this because we need. Let's do this. You want to donate more professionalism in this podcast coming through? Go to massgop.com. But also find out who the candidates are in your local elections and support them. Write them a check. Go campaign for them. Go knock on doors and say vote for this person, not the other person, or just vote for this person because
just vote.
Just vote.
Because so many people don't even get involved. So if we actually had people step up, and I think we could win it over pretty easily.
Yeah. Have you talked to? I mean, I know you're in Burlington, and there's a good group of parents that agree with you in Burlington. They'll come up to you at the hockey games and the sports games. But anybody reach out to you in other towns or anything like that, dealing with the same thing?
Yeah, I actually have a client she lives in Florida, and she said that her daughter lives in Ohio.
Okay.
And she had said it was interesting because someone had posted a clip of one of our school committee meetings at a school committee meeting in Ohio to say we have to make sure this stuff doesn't happen in our town. So the woman that's in Florida, that's let's say a client of mine from Florida, she was saying her daughter's in Ohio, and she says, "Hey, what's going on in Burlington? Someone showed me a clip of you speaking at a school committee meeting. Sounds like things are crazy there." So I've had people reach out, and I was going to say earlier, I remember Ronald Reagan. I read a book by him years ago, and he was saying that if you there are more of us than there are of them. It's still a center-right country if you look at each person individually, and if you're willing to make the case, and if you're glib enough and you can make an argument, and you can state your point, because they're always going to try to tell you that you're wrong, you're bigoted, you're hateful. But if you get up and make the case, you'll find that more people than not would agree with you. And a great example was a couple of years ago, I was walking into a grocery store in town, and there was a guy that was trying to get me to get some signatures for a guy running for state rep. And this is a guy that I disagreed with wholeheartedly on everything. Mm-hmm. And so this gentleman asked me to sign that. I said, no, I wouldn't sign that for him. He said, oh, what are you talking about? You used to, he was a football player in high school. You were a football. I said, I know who he is, but I wouldn't vote for him. I said, I don't care if he's a nice guy. Yeah. I care about his policies. And then we started having a discussion. I said, well, what's your opinion on the abortion issue? He says, you know me. I can't believe it asked that. I'm 100% pro-life. I said, he's not. I said, what's your opinion on same-sex marriage? He says, oh, I think it's something. Every item that we went through, he disagreed with this guy entirely. I said, but you don't have to collect signatures for him. He had no idea where the guy stood. He just thought he was a nice guy that lived down the street.
That's odd.
And this guy's he wasn't a dunce. He was a.
But I think that's how a lot of it works.
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of people vote for Christine Monaco, not because of her policies, because they're like, oh, I know Christine, I'm going to vote for her.
She's been around forever. She must know what she's doing. She's been on school committees since the 80s.
Well, this is the problem. I mean, look,
it's
a lot of people.
It's not really about policy. It's about popularity.
Yeah. A lot of people thought Joe Biden was competent and coherent. Did
they really think that?
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, they did, because they weren't paying attention.
Yeah, they weren't paying attention. I mean, this is the biggest thing. It's like, get people to pay attention. I mean, that's what I'm trying to do with this show, is get people to just pay more attention. Here's the thing. I don't think it takes that much more effort in your life. You don't have to become a full-time politician. I mean, look, people who are right, center right, have an automatic disadvantage because we naturally gravitate towards private sector. Well, no, that's an advantage, not a disadvantage. But we go to the private sector. We have families. We start a business. We do other things. The left and the Democrat, they're an activist. They're an activist on a college campus. They graduate and they start working for some NGO or they're an intern at a state rep's office, and they're already in the pipeline. Then they run for school committee. They move to a town. They become part of the union. They get this back. It's just a cycle that reinforces itself. So we are at that disadvantage, but we do have the advantage of being correct on all these issues. And let me say this right now. I'll put this out to any detractors. Max Page, if you want to come on this program, or Christine Monaco, you want to come on this program and defend yourself, you are more than welcome. I'm happy to have you. But they won't. It's the same reason they shut down Columbia University. It's the same reason they shut down any college speaker. They know once people are allowed to hear information that disagrees with their narrative, they lose.
Well,
and they do it at the school committee meetings too. That you're limited to a couple of minutes. They shut you off, and then
that's ridiculous.
Public comment is limited to a very. They do it at the beginning of the session, so that whatever they speak about after the fact, you can't comment on it later. So, like I said, they hide under their desks.
Yeah.
And hope they'll give you a little pat in the head and say, "We heard what you said. Now go away, and we're going to continue to do what we want to do."
Well, and that was the thing with the report, because they paid to have this independent report about the whole thing, and then when the report came out, they didn't talk about it. They didn't.
Did you get a hold of the report?
They had set up a website where they put all the different surveys and all the information about the survey and this and that, and then they quietly uploaded the report on the website. So technically, it's available, but no one knows that it's available because they won't tell anybody it's available.
Is it like on a hidden page? Can people access it?
They can access it, but who's going to look for it?
Okay, I'll tell you what. When this broadcast, when we put this up, if you can send me the link, I'll put the link underneath the content in the show notes. Okay, and we'll get that out there so people can understand what the report says.
The school blamed the consultant and said the consultant messed up, and that wasn't true.
The consultant, they do what they're told.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the consultant had sent an email to the head of mental health services, Christine Concession, telling them that they had made changes to the survey. And then nothing ever happened to that email. And then the survey went forward. So
so you have young kids, that your kids are still in middle school, and
I have one going up to middle school, but she's going to go to Austin Prep because I don't want her going.
I can't say I blame you, but that's an added expense you shouldn't have to deal with.
It's not cheap living in Burlington.
Yeah. Well, it's not cheap living anywhere in Massachusetts, especially if you're trying to avoid the things you're trying to avoid in the schools, which you can't. And I remember we were at a dinner party a while ago. And my wife and I were talking, and it's this thing, and another parent was like, all right, we're out of here. No, I don't want this anywhere near our kids. And I said to her, I was like, well, we send our daughter to Catholic school, but I don't want her not necessarily, not the survey per se, but running away from it isn't going to work. I mean, and this is one thing that I think we all have to sort of agree to and come to terms with. It's like, it's not going anywhere. You have to learn how to fight it, out-argue it, debate it, face it, not be afraid of the name calling, which is nonsense because it's all they have. We have to be, I don't know, have a little bit of faith that we are on the right side of it, because we are on the right side of it, but you can't run away from it. Well,
that's
you can't avoid
Absolutely.
it. You can't avoid it. Now, granted, a 12 or 13-year-old shouldn't have to deal with it.
Right.
As they get into high school, theoretically, you shouldn't have to deal with it, but now you know what? You have to deal with it. So you have to we have to teach our kids how to deal with it, because it's not going anywhere.
Part of it is I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to cede this ground either. If all
Correct.
of the people that feel like us leave, what happens then? There's no pushback.
Yeah.
And in the front door of my house, there's a thing that we have hanging there. It says, "One man with courage makes a majority." And so, each year we have the kids sit down and watch that movie, 12 Angry Men, that old black and white Henry Fonda movie. But you explain to the kids that if you stand up on the side of right, people will respect that. And that incident that we were talking about happened in the middle school a couple of years ago, where the kids wore the American flags. I showed my son an article that USA Today had written. The USA Today is a very leftist newspaper, and the article was written very much from the perspective of the other side. But then the comments, there was something like 15,000 comments, and I showed him the comments, and at least 9 out of 10 of the comments were supportive of the kids, saying, good for those kids for standing up. And I said, so when you stand up and do the right thing, a majority typically will follow you. But someone has to have the courage to stand up and do what's right. And people respect the truth, and people respect what's right. And we are on the right side of this. And so there's been some valuable lessons for the kids, but it just ticks me off that I have to inoculate my kids pretty much on a daily basis from the things that they learn in school. And whether it's a computer science class, or whether it's a math class, or whether it's an English class, how do they infuse this into every facet? And that's what they keep trying to do with this social emotional learning. They're trying to weave it in through every part of the curriculum. So even if there is an opt-out, you can opt your kid out of sex ed, but then every other class they're taking has this so-called social emotional learning
SEL
component to it.
it's a poisonous pill.
It's ridiculous.
Trojan horse.
Yeah, you look, your kids are going to be okay. Yeah, it's really the parents who are, maybe single parent, doing the best they can, scraping by, putting trust in the system, where they're going to wake up one day and then their kid's going to come home and just drop a bomb on them that, now they're trans or something like that. Where let me say this, the amount of children that are now identifying as trans with parents who lean a certain ideologically way is statistically impossible.
Yeah.
It's statistically impossible. It's a social contagion, and it needs to be addressed as that. And the problem I think you have now is a lot of this is far gone, and now it's like when you double down on it, they're going to keep doubling down.
One of the things I mentioned on one of those, I think it was the first time that I had spoken at a school committee meeting, when I spoke to the superintendent and the assistant superintendent last year about this, I brought some stats that I had looked up, and since they instituted this social emotional learning in schools, there's been, and this was a brag by the people that are the architects of this social emotional learning, they said there's been a 600+% increase in kids identifying as LGBT. I said that's impossible. It's statistically
impossible for it to happen.
But that's what's happened in the last 10 years. That's occurred. And even Bill Maher, I saw a clip that he was speaking to somebody, and he said, if this is a real thing, he goes, I go to dinner parties in New York and in LA all the time. He says, but I have a friend from Youngstown, Ohio. Doesn't happen. So every party I go to in LA or in New York, every parent has at least one kid that's transitioning.
Yeah.
Then you go to Youngstown, Ohio, it's not a thing.
Yeah.
So if this was a real thing.
No, again, statistically impossible.
It's a socioeconomic issue because it's all rich kids. It's not kids living in poor communities identifying as LGBTQ. I've seen the statistics. It's all these upper class kids who have mental health issues with their parents, and their parents want the little, they want to brag about their kid who's trans because they're like, I'm a hero parent. I stand up for my kid.
Right.
I mean, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, even my daughter, when she was in middle school, because she's in high school now, would say, oh, well, all the girls identify as bi because if they don't, then they're considered bigots. So that was the cool thing, was that you just say you're bi, even though you're not. But that way you're like in that group now. You're not the bigot.
And you don't catch any flack from anybody else.
Right.
Either,
So technically, they take that survey. They say I'm bi. Now they're in the LGBTQ.
Yeah.
So all these numbers increase.
And they get more funding. Which
and that's
gets
what
more,
that's what that whole survey was about. Really, is they want to take a look at all the kids that identify as LGBTQ, show how they have poor mental health. They don't feel like they belong. They're being bullied, and they go, oh well, we need to keep these kids safe.
Yeah.
Because they're not safe at school. So what are we going to do? We're going to push more of this stuff on these kids.
Our second
these
DEI
kids,
officer.
These kids are engaging in sexual behaviors. Well, they're not going to stop. So we're just going to have to teach them how to do it safely.
Right.
I mean, I've seen it in the UK. They had a sex ed class where they were teaching kids how to safely ask for consent before choking someone. Because choking is such a big problem because these kids are seeing it in porn. So their solution to that was not to tell kids not to choke people, but to tell them how to do it safely.
Well, mention the stats about the increase in sexual abuse against minors that are perpetrated by minors as opposed to what it used to be.
Yeah. Well, because I personally work in the field of sexual abuse prevention of children.
Okay.
So that's kind of why I'm more vocal about this kind of stuff because I'm like, holy crap. This is a lot of these kids that identify as LGBTQ have trauma. This is a trauma response for a lot of these kids, or it's an attachment issue with their parents. They have a poor attachment, and therefore they go to this community to feel like they belong. But so like 10, 15 years ago, the rates of children perpetrating sexual abuse was like estimated like 35, 40%. And now it's like 75. So you think about the consequences of sexualizing children and normalizing sex. And just look at, you don't need to have a PhD. We know what the brain of a middle school child is like. They're a hot mess.
Yeah.
It's like crazy. Like just to like put this stuff in front of them. It's like almost like saying like, oh, well, my 12-year-old keeps stealing the keys to my car. So you know what? I think we should just lower the limit and let these kids start driving.
Get them
no.
a set of keys.
Yeah, you know what I mean? You'd be like, no, wait, we can't let you do this. You're a child. But yet with the sex stuff, they're like, oh no, let's just teach them. Let's put condoms in the class, in the bathrooms. Let's teach them how to. I mean, a friend of mine lives in Lexington, and she pulled her kids out because the sex ed class was teaching them how to use Saran wrap to perform oral sex safely on each other. And when she brought it up to the school denied it. And she's like, so you're telling me that my son just made this up and just wanted to say this in me, like he was totally
he wanted to have that
uncomfortable.
awkward conversation with his mother. Yeah,
exactly. And so
one of the things one of the first conversations I had with the middle school when I went in there, they're talking about this transgender issues, and I was asking them, I said, we're talking about gender dysphoria, and this guy kind of snaps back at me and he says, we don't use labels at this school. I said, you used gender queer like 6 times in the last paragraph.
Yeah.
Someone made that up 15 minutes ago, and you're using that as an explanation for why you keep putting this in front of my kid.
Right.
I said, we're talking about gender dysphoria. It's a medical diagnosis. And so I made him acknowledge that I was giving him a medical diagnosis, and eventually he did. And I said, all right, well, what's the most common dysphoria that affects young people? I said, it's anorexia. So say if you got a kid that's anorexic and the kid comes to school every day and throws their lunch away and says, kid's wasting away to nothing, how's the school going to handle that? You're going to intervene. You're going to bring the parents in. You're going to have a discussion. You're going to treat the kid. And you're going to counsel the kid and say, no, even though you look in the mirror and see someone who's fat, you're dangerously skinny. We need to correct this. And if the kid doesn't take counseling, then they're going to institutionalize the kid, put them in a hospital, put an IV in their arm, and get them better. So, but then you have this other dysphoria, which is far less common. You have this gender dysphoria. So some kid comes in and says, I'm a girl, when clearly it's a boy, and everyone has to bend the knee in the whole school. So if I'm a teacher in that school and I say to the anorexic kid, good for you, live your truth, I support you, throw away that lunch that your parents gave you. They just don't understand. They're old fashioned. They're trying to get you to eat food.
Well, yeah.
So why the disparate treatment? You get one where we're going to treat the kid and say, no, we need to teach you the truth. And then we have the other one where if a teacher goes against the trans kid and says, when I'm not going to use your preferred pronouns, I'm going to use what you are, that teacher's going to lose their job. And if a kid ever speaks out against this so-called trans kid, the kid's going to get detention. They're going to get suspended. They're going to get thrown out of school. They're going to be labeled a bigot. So explain to me why you would treat these two things differently. And if I was a teacher that kept telling that kid to live their truth that's anorexic, I'm not going to have a job. And if I'm a parent that says, I'm a body-affirming parent, so you come to my house, DSS is going to come to my house. If my kid goes to school every day with no lunch, no money to buy lunch, never eats a thing, and then the DSS comes to speak to me about it, and they see there's no food in the house, and I say, don't let my little princess ever be told she's wrong. She's living her truth. They're going to take my kid away, and so they have no answer to that.
And
it's just common sense.
We know what the answer is that they can't say is they want this to happen.
Yeah, it's the LGBTQ lobbying.
Yeah.
Once they got gay rights, it's like, well, what are you going to fight for now? Well, now we got to fight for this
because
you had all this money, right? You have all these people that need jobs.
Yeah.
So what are you going to fight for? Which I do love how they're like cannibalizing themselves. I love when they told the lesbians that they had to accept men as lesbians, and the lesbians were like, hell no.
Yeah, the TERFs are good. Well, but see, I mean, out in California, I think they just passed this where it's now they're going to be shielding the information from parents. So you can expect that here in Massachusetts, or you can expect that effort to take place where flat out they will actively avoid involving parents. Now, I think, it's a murky area, as you just mentioned, as far as what they will or will not engage with parents. But then if it's in the law, codified into law, they will make sure that parents are excluded, and all of a sudden you come home with a completely different human being.
Well, the one thing that's really concerning is that, we looked through our school budget, is that there was like $40,000 spent on this mental health services platform called Cartwheel Cares. And it's like kids can get mental health services in school remotely. So they're seeing a therapist on their iPad or whatever on school time, and you might not even know that your kid's doing this. And so when I looked into the Cartwheel Cares organization, it's a nonprofit. It's run by a guy who ran another organization that he started because he was gay and he didn't have anybody to affirm him when he was a kid. So he created this organization. So when you follow, you fall down the rabbit hole, you're like, whoa, like what is their motivation? Their motivation is to affirm kids behind their parents' back.
Yeah.
And cut us out of the equation. And that's what they keep doing. They keep cutting us out of the equation.
Yeah. It's intentionally.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of the things I mentioned in one of the school committee meetings is when I did do a bit of a deep dive into this social and emotional learning stuff, and it's something called the Castle model. One of the architects of this, in an interview, was saying that that this is the new form of discipleship, and we're going to send these kids out to evangelize the world. So what's the intention? But they just said it.
Yeah.
So if you they said the loud part because they were in front of a sympathetic audience, in front of some journalists that were like-minded.
Here's the great part about living in 2025. We're Gen Xers. You look a little younger. Are you a millennial?
I'm 1981.
Okay.
I'm on the cusp.
On the cusp. Okay.
Yeah.
For Gen Xers, when we were growing up in the 80s and 90s, all of the crazy stuff was behind closed doors, maybe in obscure books by academics. It wasn't said openly. It was sort of like the Democratic party of like Bill and Hillary Clinton, like push the crazies to the side a little bit. They were just criminals and they weren't necessarily, they kept the real kooks at bay. Over the last 20 years, the kooks have taken over, and they're openly, like, nobody would believe you if you told them that unless you showed them the video. And even sometimes when you show them the video, they're like, what's the big deal? Which is mind-blowing to me. But again, this is the apathy of our fellow parents, where hopefully, we can take back control over their education and just get this nonsense out, but fight one battle at a time. And, again, we've gone, it's been a quick hour. It's gone fast. I want to applaud both of you. Thank you for standing up. It takes more people like you just getting involved, showing up, taking care of your kids, and doing what you think is right. So it's not always easy to do. You're going to get a lot of pushback and a lot of actual hate from the people who claim to be against hate, which is ironic.
She gets a lot. She's on Facebook, so she gets all of it.
I get it all.
I have no social media whatsoever.
The keyboard warriors are all over the place, But when it comes down to it, but here's the thing: actual affecting change, you got to vote the school committee members out. You got to get organized in advance. Find a candidate, somebody who's willing to step up and do the right thing, or else this is going to keep happening.
Well, right? And I think parents really need to ask questions with their kids, because these kids, it's almost normal to them now. So they're getting exposed to this stuff. They're not even thinking to tell us what's going on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Go ahead.
How old is your oldest?
My oldest is going to be 16.
Okay, and you have the ones that are in college. I'm curious if you've talked to them about this, and maybe we'll wrap up with this, even though there's anything else you guys want to cover. Mine's still in middle school. I think, and I've seen with family members, friends who have older children, that there's sort of like a sharp divide where normal kids now roll their eyes at this stuff because they've been
tired of it.
Yeah, they've been hit with
They're
it their
exhausted.
whole lives. They're just over it.
Well, especially the boys. I
Yeah.
think the boys are so tired of being told that they suck because they're white,
Right.
or, or they're male.
Yeah.
Like, that's the worst thing you could be.
Right. So was there a pushback? I mean, are you feeling like on a cultural level, like, or a societal level, where it's the Gen Z? I guess they're Gen Z.
I don't know what I am.
Well, no, I'm saying if they're finally like, yeah, we're done with this.
Well,
they ignore it or they push it out.
Well, I teach middle school religious ed. So 2 years ago, I was doing the 7th graders, and they would bring it up all the time about how sick and tired they were of it at school. And so they kind of swang really conservative because these kids are just so sick of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're definitely pushing back because they're tired of it, and I think their parents support them in that, which is great.
I think the left has definitely overplayed their hand, which they're not going to do anything but that. It's going to keep going unless it stops. They're going to keep pushing it.
If you look at the same-sex marriage debate thing, I remember talking to somebody about it years ago, and anytime that was put on any sort of ballot, it would get voted down. So everything's done through judicial fiat, or everything's done through a school committee or some appointed bureaucracy. So I find it ironic that they're always talking about the threats to democracy, but everything they do is never democratic. It's never something that's the will of the people. It's their will being imposed on everybody else. And
well, they find a way to do it. I mean, there's some bills that are, up in committee. Like last week, there was a bill that I actually registered to testify against that would give librarians carte blanche decision-making about what kind of books they can put into school libraries.
Is this Beacon Hill or
yeah,
is
Beacon
it,
Hill.
up in the State House?
Yeah, at the State House.
Yeah.
And basically, like, if they put, because I mean, some of these books are literally pornographic. I mean, they're graphic novels with images of kids engaging in sex.
Yeah.
And so when parents push back and are like, we don't want this book in our school, basically it's going to say that the librarian has the right to do that if they get to make that decision, and that it makes it very hard for parents to remove the books out of the school system. Yeah. And if they remove the book, the school can actually get sued for removing it, but they can't get sued for keeping a book in. So, I mean, people really have to pay attention to this kind of stuff too, because they're doing these backhanded kind of things to override, parental rights.
Well, I'll keep an eye on that bill.
Yeah.
I'll do my best to
Mass Family Institute, they do a great job of raising awareness for this kind of stuff.
They'll have that listed, so we'll get behind that. So that's the purpose of this program, is make people more aware of what's going on in their own communities and in the state. And we're going to be successful. We are normal. Okay. Listen, this is time. It's time we just get back to what we know what works, and push out the people who are pushing the nonsense. So, all right, I'm going to wrap this episode up. I want to thank you, David, Adrian. It's been a pleasure. Hopefully you are successful in Burlington, but I know there's a lot of towns that this is going to be affecting. So I will hopefully have good news to report next year. I will be pressing gubernatorial candidates if you're going to be coming on. This is an issue you have to take. You have to be bold and brave about it, because a lot of parents are concerned about it. They're tired of the nonsense. Everybody's exhausted with this stuff. They're really exhausted with it. But it takes decisive and good leadership to put it at bay. So,
and to that point, the woman Christine Monaco that she mentioned, her first meeting that we had about this, she opened the meeting by saying that we can all agree that we were horrified by these questions. So and she said that a couple of times, but everybody was surprised by it. You weren't surprised by it. But if she's saying openly that she's horrified, she knows how bad it is.
Yeah, but not willing to do anything about it.
Right, but she lets the superintendent run with it and do whatever he wants to do. So they acknowledge this is the side of right, and it's so easy. For a gubernatorial candidate, this is a layup.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer.
Parents want strong leaders to lead the charge, and they'll stand behind them. But if they're wishy-washy on it, then you
don't be a squish.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people realize how young 11 is. Like, go find an 11-year-old, have a conversation with an 11-year-old, and then read that question.
Yeah.
You didn't read the worst questions. You read a couple of them.
I had what I had,
but there's a lot worse questions than the ones you read. And so if you read that question, then go find an 11-year-old kid and have a conversation, and then you come back and tell me that there's in any way, shape, or form this is appropriate.
The whole endeavor is completely inappropriate and belongs nowhere near this, and it just needs to end. So we're going to make that happen. All right, Adrian, David, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. This will keep coming back up. We're going to drive this home for the next 18 months till election next year, and get involved in your school committee. and know who your candidates are, especially who Max Page is trying to push forward in your town, because that's not going to end either. And with that, until next time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Take care. Bye-bye.